Welcome to the Present and Sober podcast with your hosts, Sam Goldfinch and Ellie Crow. If you want to make your life bigger, not smaller, then this is the podcast for you. If you can sense that you're destined for more and you're curious about how drinking could be holding you back, listen in and come on this journey with us. Through the interplay of mind and body practices, we will help you elevate your daily life and discover the wonder and potential of going alcohol-free. Let's make life bigger together. Hey everybody, so here we are in the heart of December. We're all decorating our lounges, or maybe not. Perhaps we don't even celebrate Christmas, whatever it is that's going on. Who knows? I'm sure that we've got all sorts of different experiences playing out. Thousands of them, of everyone who's tuning in. And that's really, really cool. And that's a huge part of what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about conflict and avoiding it, or perhaps not necessarily avoiding conflict, but perhaps some new ways of looking at it. And particularly around Christmas, we know that people can feel triggered. There can be a lot of emotions. We can be sort of pushed to hang out with people for longer than we might choose to. But there's also, as always, a fantastic opportunity to see the world anew and to learn something awesome this Christmas. So that's what we're talking about today, conflict and what to do about it. So before we do that, if anyone's got time to leave us a review, that would be fantastic. We've got some absolutely beautiful ones, and it's just so nice to see people taking so much time to craft what they write, and it's just lovely. So here we are, just kind of shamelessly requesting for a few more lovely things on there, both so that we can read them and get some lovely feedback from you, but also so that others can read them and get an insight into what we're up to here together. All right, team, I think that's all. See you in a sec.
Hello. Happy, I don't want to say happy Tuesday, or do I? Happy festive Tuesday. It's, what day is it? Next week.
When it's coming out.
In the future.
Oh my goodness. It's a big question. Yeah, it's December something.
Well, do you know, it's always now, isn't it? It's always now. That's a nice mug you've got there, Mr. Sam, for our YouTube viewers.
It's got a fish on it.
It's got a slippery fish on it.
Yeah.
So we hope everybody is enjoying the festive build-up. And we have a podcast for you today that is going to help you enjoy your Christmas and make the most of it and have a great one, irrespective of what everybody else is doing. So whatever your plans are, wherever you're going, wherever you're hosting, you can have a fantastic time, regardless of the, those Scrooges that might be in your life that you're going to meet up. So this episode is all about dust-ups. It's all about punch-ups, arguments.
Oh, well, yeah, we'd called it conflict, but yeah, I guess
general conflict.
The whole thing, the whole shebang. So
if you feel like punching somebody on the nose, this is for you. Stay tuned. So, Mr. Sam, our first froggy, I was going to call it a lily pad, but it should be something to do with a boxing ring, shouldn't it? Because it's
first
conflict.
Round.
Yeah, first round. What's our first round about?
Ding ding. Well, yeah, we would. I mean, I guess it was just a nod to what you said, that Christmas is a time when we're connection is what we're orienting towards, but often we can feel quite kind of triggered and we can find ourselves in conflict and we can be hanging out with our family or perhaps extended members and stuff in a way that we might not usually do, and there's lots of people in rooms that can't fit that many people. It's like, it's one of them things, isn't it? And
it's like
whoever
that thing
it is,
where you have to sit on the funny chairs, don't you? So when we used to go, when we get all the families together when we were kids, you wouldn't ever have a table and chairs big enough. So it would be like a mishmash of here's one chair. So here's the dining table. And then we'll add on like a little square table to the end. And then it would be all like different sizes. And then you'd have people on all sorts of different seats. It was fun.
The kids' table.
Back in the 80s. Yeah, kids' table. Yeah.
People don't have chairs anymore, do they?
And scarily, we used to get served baby sham as kids when we were probably about 9 or 10. That's another podcast.
Classic.
Sorry, anyway, I interrupted you with my reminiscing about chairs.
You're all right. Chairs, I remember them. Yeah, I remember them.
Spare chairs.
But no, that's it's sort of one of them things, isn't it? So, Uncle Bob, he's going to overcook the bloody turkey again, isn't he? And Auntie Sandra, she's
Get
going to do
pissed.
that thing she does. She's going to get pissed and go on about, that time that Uncle Bob, I don't know. I was going to, we know how it goes. So the thing is, here's the thing, right? Because a lot of us, we're looking for the solution in sort of changing the world. And that would be a really cool thing if that were genuinely the best way to kind of alter our experience, right? And that's kind of how most of us go about life. We think, okay, Christmas is happening. That might happen. That might happen. I wonder what I can put in place ahead of time to make it less likely to happen, or, whatever. And even that, it's not helpful. So what we'd really, really like to offer is the potential, the possibility, just opening the door just a little bit for anyone that's listening, that that doesn't need to happen, that nothing could change, that everything could be exactly as it always is, or very similar, and actually you could have a really lovely experience and not be triggered, and all those things that a lot of people sort of talk about.
Yeah. It's a hugely important point, because this isn't just for Christmas. It's for any time of year, really, but it's poignant at Christmas for the points that you mentioned, and and we've all experienced this, trying to control other people because it feels like that's the way things work. And wouldn't it be nice if? And they should change because they're wrong with the way that they cook the turkey or put the pigs in blankets together or whatever. But just like dwell there for a second and think about a time where you've been trying to change somebody else or the circumstances that are outside of your control, and just think about how much tension that introduces, and then how long that tension sticks around for, and what happens when things either don't go to plan, or they deviate wildly off course, or the person, it's almost even worse if the person changes a little bit and you get a glimpse or a glimmer of things going your way, and then the rug gets whipped out from underneath you.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
So go on.
No, I thought you did. I ripped the rug out from beneath you.
Did. You bastard.
You asshole. I just realized in that moment, it's really curious, right? The same thing happens if we do that to ourselves. So if we're like, I'm going to change how I am this year, like I'm going to behave in a certain way, I'm not going to get annoyed, I'm not going to get triggered or whatever. And we have this kind of like conditioning that we try and sort of force into our head. If we then don't live up to that, then the whole like house of cards comes down in an instant. And I don't know, I'm sure for many of us, we've maybe had that experience where you're like, right, going to go home, going to stay with the parents or do whatever. And I'm a new person. I'm new, shiny Sam. Nothing's going to get in the way. And then, you walk in the door and something happens and you're like, oh, fucking hell. And
it just reminded me of, how much I love Real Housewives, the various different versions of the different places. There was, I can't remember which franchise it was, but one of the Great Housewives, one of the Real Housewives episodes, there was a lady, and she called herself Zen Wen. So she decided that she was going to be Zen, and nothing could be further from the truth throughout the rest of, like, it wouldn't have made good TV if she was Zen. But yeah, she really scuppered herself with this. She'd given herself this identity and this mantra, and then she didn't live up to Zen Wen. It all went very wrong and unwound rapidly.
Zen Wen went out the window. Yeah, it's a really common pattern, because if you think about it, if you have an idea like I am Zen or I am anything, now you may know that you've got that, you might not. It might be a program you installed when you were like 4 or something. But then if you don't live up to it, well, what's the message you get? For example, a classic would be, I'm a perfectionist. Well, inevitably, when we don't create perfection, it's a whole other conversation there. We can innocently whip up feelings of even shame, all sorts of feelings, guilt. And it can be, so it's funny because the assumption is, in order for Christmas to go well, I need something I don't currently have. So I'm going to change who I am or who they are so they can go well. When really, at truth, the question is not, what do I need in order to make Christmas wonderful? The question is like, what's getting in the way? And there's
Mm.
only ever one answer to what's getting in the way of me feeling connected, peaceful, loving, or happy. And that is the special effects department. It's thought in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's like clouds rolling through.
Yeah. And the other thing that just struck me is that everything is transient and impermanent, including our emotional states. And so if we set ourselves up with I am Zen when, then there has to be a point where we're not. And so having like any of these kind of fixed ideals is really going to have us suffer. And the other thing that's interesting is that we have these fixed ideals or ideas of other people. And again, they're not fixed. Like we change all the time. So we need to be really careful about not just the restrictions that we're putting on ourselves to be in a certain what's the word? Like we're not ever going to be in this fixed state. And as much as we likely want the capacity to grow and develop, then we want that for other people too. And so if you're making the assumption that, who'd you say, Uncle Bob? My Uncle Bob was awesome.
Sorry to all the Uncle
He
Bobs
never
out
burnt
there.
the turkey. My Uncle Bob, do you know what he did at Christmas one year? This is really funny. Uncle Bob, this is my dear granddad's brother. We were very young at this point in time. He came around and he's sitting there with all of the other oldies. And I'd got a plasticine set for Christmas. And so I made everybody, me and my sister made everybody little plasticine sweets. And we dished them out to everybody. And poor Uncle Bob ate it, like digested the whole thing. He thought it was actual food. And it was plasticine. Imagine what that tasted like, poor Uncle
Plasticine.
Bob. No, plasticine.
I think I have eaten plasticine before.
Although there are probably lots of things in the 80s that did taste like plasticine, because you could put all sorts of stuff in processed food then. Anyway.
You digress. We digress.
Uncle
I got
Bob,
it right.
Yeah, digress for once you got it right. Uncle Bob, even if Uncle Bob has burnt the turkey every year prior, it doesn't mean that this year he's going to burn it again. You know, we take these assumptions of how things have been in the past, and we carry them forward, and we make the assumptions of how people are going to be, how they're going to behave, what they're going to say. And we can't know that. We can't possibly know that.
Yeah, even cooler than that is, even if someone does do that thing they always do, it doesn't mean that there's no like written rule that we are always going to have the response or the reaction, because it's not actually coming from where we think it is. So we've spoken about this a lot on the podcast, and it's a funky thing to hold. I mean, we've known about this for a long, long time. And I've been writing a lot about this recently. It still blows my mind that we are, our experience of what's going on out there is being generated through, we use a word like the inside, but, or special effects department or thought in the moment, or, whatever kind of metaphor you want to use. But that's where it's coming from. It isn't coming from the world. It's not coming from the world. And so that's why, and that's interesting, knowing that has some huge implications. One of them that's really, really helpful, particularly with conflict, is in understanding, first and foremost, is like to me is in understanding what conflict even is. So we were like having a think about that. I'm sure there's a dictionary definition, but we were talking about like what it kind of means to us for this conversation here. And it kind of had this, to me, it kind of had this feeling of wanting either ourselves or someone else or the world to be different to how it is. So we go and try and change the world in order to accomplish that. And that causes resistance, sometimes conflict. But if it's true, if it's true that what you're experiencing isn't coming from the world, it's coming through you, changing the world, it's not the right solution at the end of the day. It's not actually going to get you where you want to go. And yeah, it's all a bit paradoxical, but it's very cool. It's
just while you were talking, I looked up the definition just briefly, and it says a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting is the verb conflict is referring to incompatibility. And can you imagine a world where we all agreed on everything? It'd be horrendous.
It's funny because it feels to me that so what we do is we try and figure out whether we agree with each other at the level of the content of what we're thinking. So what we try and do is we go, okay, I am a this or a that. I think this about this political party or whatever it might be. I think the turkey should be very
Golden
overcooked. I have a different word for that. That kind of thing, when actually the key is to go to the layer above that, which isn't the content, it's the nature of what's going on. So if we believe that it's actually possible to make somebody see the world like us, then it will make sense to us to try and do that. But actually, the moment we realize, oh, that's not possible, like we can share notes and be like, yeah, I do actually really like the turkey being cooked the same way as you. But actually, we never see the world like anybody else. Like we've had a whole incredible series of like flow and events that are all, completely connected. It's like complex beyond anything we could possibly imagine that's brought us to where we are now. You can't just like transplant your way of seeing the world into somebody else's head. And to me, I mean, that was a big one for me. I think all through my 20s, if my dad's listening to this, he'll laugh. Because basically every time my dad did something, I think I probably just disagreed with him, like out of some kind. I would have said on principle, but actually it's like I didn't know what else to do. And the moment I was just like, do you know what? Like, that's just not, I don't want to do that anymore. And it just made sense for me to sort of drop that game. It was like, yeah, awesome. We can have a chat and I can say how I see the world. My dad can see how he says it, or whoever it is. And then we can actually enjoy the fact that we see the world differently. And it's not that we have to like everybody's opinions, or, this doesn't mean that we have to hang out with people that for whom their values seem a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about that. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that goal of trying to make people see the world like us. I mean, that's just not possible, as it looks to me.
You want to hide into nothing. That's what that is, hiding to nothing. Exhausting. Takes up a bunch of time that you're not going to get back, by the way. Lots of tension.
Yeah, but it's all innocent. I mean, this is the thing. We do these things until they don't make sense. But it made sense to me for like most of my life to be like that. And then I'd get annoyed at myself. Like, why are you being a dick? You're supposed to be like, Zen when? What's going on?
Zen Sam.
Where's Zen when?
Zen when, yeah. It was very funny. Anyway. I think there's something interesting about this question of compatibility, because we don't have to have the same, and nobody is ever going to have the same background, the same makeup, the same building blocks that get them to a certain point. Like we're not going to be the same. We're not all going to have the same ideas, but we can still be compatible. And it comes down to respecting other people and respecting other people's views, even when we don't agree with them, or especially when we don't agree with them, making space for them, allowing them, and having compassion for others and their level of understanding. We can make space for all of that. So there can be, even with discord and disagreement and different viewpoints, there can still be harmony. It is still available.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, 100%. It comes down, to me, at its core, it boils down to, if we're working under the assumption that we are the one who's got access to reality, the reality, ultimate reality, objective reality, then anybody who doesn't agree with what we think, we're going to be like, they're mental. Like, how could they possibly see the world that way? But no one's got access to actual reality. We have access to our experience, and someone else has access to their experience. And where if for a different birth in a different country with a different upbringing and a different set of cultural values, etc., we'd be entirely different as well. So we're not created in a vacuum. So I think it's And that's true, right? If you have a group of people, for example, on one side of, I don't know, like the politics is coming to me. I'm not going to dive deep into this, but we have a group of people on the left and a group of people on the right. If they both think that they are in reality, that they've got truth, then they're going to like loggerheads and be at war with each other. If they know that they have a flavor of their flavor of what they think is going on and what's best, it actually invites in curiosity, like over conflict. So you're like, oh, that's really curious. I wonder how you see the world that way. Because, I mean, there are people out there that are doing things right now that I'd be like, how does that make sense? I don't get it. I really don't get it. Like, and then there's a curiosity rather than now I need to change the way that they see it. Yeah.
And that's the thing that is the magical thing that opens up space for development and growth and change. Because as I was saying earlier on, like if you imagine a world where we all agreed and we all thought the same thing and we all behaved in the same way, God, not only would it be really weird, it would be really awful, really strange. There's if you think about, some of these times in our lives where we've been activated by other people, like now, and sometimes, granted, it can be very difficult to see it at the time, but I don't know about you, Mr. Sam, I'm guessing it's the same as it is for me. Like, you look back on those people as like your greatest teachers. You learn so much from those people, those interactions, those opportunities to be in relationship with others. Like, it's meant to be complicated and complex and difficult and interesting. And so I love what you said about curiosity, because curiosity, like if you can have that as your leading virtue, then you're gonna have a much easier time and a much more harmonious time, and you're going to learn so much and be able to grow as a result of it. It doesn't mean that you have to adopt somebody else's beliefs or values, but it opens up space for new possibility.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. I think curiosity is innate. I think it's just it's something that we all have things that we're kind of naturally curious about, and they tend to be things that we become inspired by, and then we kind of follow the breadcrumbs and all that kind of stuff. But people are fascinating. The world is fascinating. The fact that there's like 8 billion different reality tunnels going on right now that's really fascinating. And
that's just here.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, right? You go and watch. I mean, I watched this thing on Netflix the other day. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called A Trip to Infinity. Have you seen it?
Oh no.
It's worth a watch, but it's like mind bending, right? Absolutely mad. And I watched this whole thing and I was like, this is really, really curious. But then a number of things there's been so many, as there always are, so many advances in quantum physics recently, and consciousness studies, and all sorts of things are happening, which is very, very cool. But it's interesting to know that ultimately, any discovery that through the field of science or whatever it might be, it's still being found through our frame. So we can kind of like try and make a guess as to what's really going on out there. But I mean, it's mad. And I just think that's really cool. I just think the moment to me, like, I love what you said about the people being our greatest teachers. Much more often now, I can actually be with someone who I don't know, I'm making a guess that a few years ago I've had stomped off and had a moment about. The mist kind of clears, and I get really curious, and I'm sort of like, they're experiencing their being and what it is that's going on for them, and like just ask questions and stay with that curiosity in a way that wasn't kind of available to me before. And that's cool. And that's the thing. If you walk it, imagine like, from a practical point of view, you sort of go into here's the difference, right? I'm just going to make this up as we go. You walk in and, you're having a conversation with Uncle Bob about the turkey, and you're like, oh, Uncle Bob, like, yeah, why'd you love, why'd you love cooking the turkey like that? I don't know what it's going to be, but you can't ask it aggressively, obviously. And you open up this discussion, and then suddenly there's this really interesting thing about how Uncle Bob went to, I don't know, some foreign land in the 1950s that you never knew about. And, and this lady taught, and you're like, oh, bloody hell. Like, and suddenly you're in a world of curiosity as opposed to a world of like, because it's always infinitely more beautiful and infinitely more amazing and complicated and cool than we label it to be, than we make it out to be. The moment is always much deeper than that. We sort of, because we're human and because of the way our psychologies work, we simplify things and we filter things out. But actually, there's a whole world in that Christmas party that you've innocently filtered out. You can invite it in. You can basically be like, I wonder what would happen if I actually like asked some curiosity questions about this and sort of went on an exploration and discovered why the world looked like that to someone.
I love the word exploration. That's a really great intention to have, to explore, because that what you've just described is so expansive. Like, isn't that wonderful? As opposed to going like Groundhog Day, going back in with the same viewpoint, rolling your eye. Oh, here comes the bloody burnt turkey. Here we go. Like, it feels really, really different. And the great thing is for all of us that we get to choose. We get to choose how we want to go into any and all of these situations. It's entirely down to us. So get thoughtful before, as you're mapping out your festive holiday calendar and the different things that you're doing. You can think ahead of time about how you want to be going into these interactions with these, whether it's relatives or friends or, whoever you're going to be seeing, and feel into that expansive nature versus that closed down, limited perspective. Like, what do you really want? What feels better?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you focus on what you want over what you don't want, you'll see something different. So if you walk into a party and you're like, yeah, I really just want to feel connected. I want to get to know people at a deeper level. I want to understand. I just want to be curious and have a good time. Versus like, I don't want burnt turkey. I don't want dodgy Christmas jokes. I don't want Auntie Marge to, fall off the chair or whatever. I don't want all that stuff. And as some of our listeners will know, we've got this amazing thing in the brain called the reticular activating system, which filters out what's important to you. So if you focus into what you'd like to have happen, you'll see it. And I think we spoke about, I was at it's really cool. I was at where was I? I was in London at like a cool retreat conference thing a few months back. And I spoke to someone and this lady, I can't remember her name, but she was talking about the shape of our listening. And I think we spoke about this before, but ultimately the shape of our listening is kind of dictates what we see. Like, they know from study that if you're looking for the negative, you'll hear it all and you'll omit to hear the positive. So the thing is, now so if you go in with a story, and I don't use that word as a, it's just a story, get over it, but like a narrative as to what's going to go on in that event, because you've been every time and you know what's going to happen and it's always the same. Then you will innocently see things play out like that. But if you actually drop it and get really curious and you're like, I wonder what would happen if I actually just let all that go. And the other really cool thing about that is it gives you more opportunity to choose again as well. So this is something I've noticed in my life, is that when I used to go into difficult situations or things that I thought were inherently difficult, I've now realized that's not actually true. That's just what I thought. If something went wrong, then I wouldn't be able to shake it. So by went wrong, as if I did the thing that I didn't want to do, or if somebody did the thing that they knew they were definitely going to do that, then I'd end up in a kind of thought storm and then I'd be in it all night or whatever. But these days, I set the intention. I know what I'd love to have happen. And if I go in there and innocently get, if something gets stirred up in me or whatever, the moment I notice it, I'm like, look, okay, compassion, grace for myself. That was, there's nothing to do. I don't need to like, this isn't like, it's not done. And then you can just kind of like, then maybe there is something to do in the sense of you might go out and just take a deep breath and just let it go. And suddenly then you can go and reconnect with that person or the group again, or, you can wake up the next morning and have a fresh start. Or if you're teaching, there's this thing in teaching, there's like every lesson's a clean slate. But I think for many teachers, it probably doesn't feel like that. Because you're like, little Jimmy's going to do that. I just know that little bugger's going to do that thing. But actually, yeah, like Sydney Banks said, what you think you are. Because it's, you at a very real level where we're living in more like a projection than we are living in an actual like experience of reality. So,
and I think one of the gifts of being alcohol free and making that radical choice to not numb the edges is that you can be so much clearer and able to be really, really discerning about things. And it just is a really different way of approaching life, really different.
And I think for so many people, for so many of us, we'll notice that what we've actually been doing is getting really, really clear about what we don't want. And we haven't even asked ourselves, what's my North Star? Because I think because you said that we were chatting about like potential practical stuff beforehand. And I was like, well, I was having a think about it. But it feels to me that the thing about practical stuff, the more how all this stuff works becomes clear to me. It's not that practical stuff and tools and tips and tricks aren't useful at working with the content of what's going on in our narrative or our story. But so I'll give you the example of positive thinking. So I used to be like a proper positive thinker. I'd be like, if I could just think positively all day, then I'd be in a positive feeling all day. And it made logical sense and it seemed to work. So I'd end up being positive, even when I probably shouldn't have been. And I'd have been really lovely and positive with previous partners who told me stop being fucking positive. Like it's, whatever. Because the thing is, it's, life is mixed. Like our emotions and our feelings and everything, they're changing all the time. So it seems much more powerful to me to know that, oh, actually, I don't have to do anything. And I'm not saying, by the way, that there's zero use in having some tricks up our sleeve to like breathing and this kind of stuff to bring us into the body. I think they're wonderful. But actually, a lot of the time, we need less, not more. It's subtractive. We are actually peaceful and calm and really just like full of curiosity at heart like that. We don't have to do anything in order to return to that. So often when we think we do, we get mixed up in our head. We're like, oh God, I'm feeling stressed and triggered and I need to do something about this. I need to get this out of my head. And then, then we're back to the snow globe analogy of like innocently just shaking it up. When all along, if it's just oh, look, you're caught up. Smile and just, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why
am I here?
I do often
what am
think.
I doing? Yeah. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to know that less is more. And it's wonderful to know that we can, it's like achieving more with less, because we just stop. We stop shaking it up. We stop adding more layers. And it's really important to get to some level of stillness to be able to see what's really there. Like awareness, just pure awareness on its own, nothing else added, no artificial ingredients, just awareness on its own. It's the biggest thing. It's the singular biggest thing. And the more that we can spend time noticing, being aware of being aware, just that in itself, like that is the only task at hand. And it's not a doing task, it's a being task.
I mean, that is the only constant. We talk about, there are different ways of framing how it works, but that's the constant. You might be experiencing different things, but you're experiencing. So even if you're experiencing a lack of being aware, like an experience of being unaware, what is it that nudges you to be aware in those moments? Interesting, right? So
Mm.
it's already done. It's already done. It's not a game of adding. It's a game of, yeah. So I think that's it. I think that's magical. That's a really magical space to open up. So yeah, what if there were less to do? What if you didn't have to come up with like the ultimate plan in order for Christmas to go well? Or, and that's not that planning, like, who was it that, I can't remember who said it, you know, planning is integral and plans are useless, right? And I think Mike Tyson makes me laugh. You know, plans are great until you get punched in the face. Like it's like and that's like it. Like the Sydney Banks used to say, life's a contact sport, and it is, right? You set your intention. You go in with as much love and understanding as makes sense to you, and that's all we can ever do. And then you just let go of the rest and see what happens, and forgive yourself if you sort of don't live up to some standards that you might have set yourself that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah, but you're going to have more access to that when you are fully present. And so that in going alcohol free some 3 years ago now, that is the biggest gift, is that just that stripping away of all of the excess noise. And sure, it means that you start to feel and experience and see things that you've perhaps been running away from for an awful long time. But as we start to enjoy the capacity to be clear and available and present, like, it becomes compelling, and we build strength, we build resilience. We don't react in the same way that we did before, or we don't react as often. We become lucid more quickly. But all the way through, this is all a practice, right? This is all, you know, part of this journey back home. So you can't be hard on yourself when, you know, you do get upset about the state of the turkey, or the fact that Uncle Bob's eating your plasticine sweets that weren't really edible.
It made sense. Couldn't have been any other way. It's what you did because you did it. Like that's how it works. But actually noticing that may be the very thing that breaks the spell. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, so hopefully there's some like real, I don't know, just a different outlook on this. Because it's very, very clear to me that in any moment in life where we're feeling connected, peaceful, loving, understanding, in flow, clear, you know, whatever word you want to use, the very last thing that occurs to the last question that occurs to us is, like, we're not worrying about it. In those purely, truly in those moments, we're just in them. You know, we're in the moment. We, you know, like the intellect, the ego, we're not even there. Like we've actually, the illusion has stopped for a moment. Yeah. The illusion has stopped for a moment. And that's amazing. That's the thing, is that it's often the falling away, like the finding of confidence or strength or whatever it might be. It's a falling away of the insecurities, and we just touch that space. And yeah, that's owned. You haven't got to do anything about that. It's it's not purchased. You don't have to work hard. It's already there.
Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves at the moment, when people say, I've got a lot of work to do. Maybe not.
Thing is, it's laced in our language, right? It's that thing of like the journey home. Well, you don't need a journey home to home when you're already there, do you? Like it's just built in, even when we're using it to point at a subtractive truth. We still use the language that's ingrained in society that basically presupposes that we need something in order to complete ourselves.
Yeah,
that we're lacking. And you know, that's just a program.
Isn't it funny though that somebody somewhere came up with this idea of, right, what we'll do is we'll take this pure consciousness and we'll put it into these funny, wacky human suits, and then we'll spread them all over the place and let them find themselves again.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I mean, I said to you, I'm gonna go back to school again, even though I said I'm not going back. I've said I've done with that. I'm going to go back next year and study consciousness at a deeper level, because I'm obsessed with it, because I'm just, it fascinates me. So I was reading a book by this does make sense, by the way, we're not just gonna disappear. I was reading a book by I might also hash this as well, but David Bohm, he's a very famous quantum physicist, and but we get to the equations and I'm like, yeah, I don't get that. My maths is like GCSE.
You're braver than I am.
Like, he was talking about if you it's really interesting, that kind of moment where we actually went from being kind of aware, but kind of not aware that we're aware, for example, there was that moment that's like ineffable and really hard to describe. He's talking about, if you imagine as the imagination developed and as we started to create stories, at some point it became very important for us to be able to differentiate between what seems like a story and what we think is going on out there. Because if you're walking down the street and you're having a daydream and you genuinely think that thing is real, so you need another thing, you need something to go, I need to be able to tell the difference. And so there's this like really crazy mystery, and that's who we really are. Like we can't be anybody else. So God, we've gone all down this line, classic with us around. But yeah, take some of that magic, some of that mystery into Christmas. Like, what if it didn't have to be the way that it had always been? What if without the world changing, it were totally possible for you to have a completely different experience?
What a gift. What a bloody good festive Christmas gift for you.
Yeah, you got it. Right. We got anything else to? I think we're about 40 minutes, so I think we've probably done a good job, mate. Or maybe not. Maybe people are going to write in and be like, "No, you really didn't. Like that was that was rubbish." But yeah, focus on what you really want.
Subject. Focus on what you really, really want. I thought you were about to dive into some Spice Girls there. Whilst we're on the subject, it'd be nice to have some reviews lately, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we haven't asked for any.
Yeah. Ask and you shall receive.
We've had some wonderful reviews coming in. We've got something like over 100 5-star reviews, which is just so lovely. Yeah, there's like go and have a look on go check it out.
Wow,
there's loads on there. It's super cool, and loads of people who've put really thoughtful things on there. So yeah, if you've got the time, please do that. That would be absolutely
I'm going to have a look,
and it really helps us out. Awesome.
I every now and again I get a notification, and I've just obviously been out of things for a little while, but I'm getting my feet back under the desk, so I'll go and have a nose. So please do submit a review wherever you listen. Spotify. Can you do it on Spotify? Or was that a contentious subject?
No, I think it's fine. Wherever you listen, that's perfect. All right, team.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.